Hello there, it's Randy Wallace with Fox 26. It's 3 o'clock on a Tuesday, which of course means another riveting episode of Behind Breaking Bond. Joining me is...
Hey, Andy Kahan, Director of Victim Services, Crime Stoppers of Houston.
And here we have...
Emily DiToto, a lawyer here in Houston.
And what are you
I
doing?
got a light up, man. But I am, it's a box of candy cigarettes, and it says victory.
Victory.
Mhm.
Victory was for what happened in court yesterday, which you covered as well. And this is just a horrific case.
It was.
Two young ladies. That,
Yeah.
One had Priscilla De Leon, had just graduated from Texas A&M,
Mhm.
and Diana Salazar from University of Houston. They were 24 years old, just beginning their adult lives, were taking an Uber home.
Real
And
close
just-
cousins.
I mean, extremely close.
Yeah.
I've gotten very close with their family. They had 10 parents and their children
Mhm.
all the time. So we finally had the trial, and he was charged with the multiple murders,
Mhm.
which is kind of interesting because the murders were the direct result of him evading police.
Mhm.
So it wasn't like your typical.
Starts out with running a red light. That's how it all kind of started out.
He ran a red light off of 59 in Tidwell, and he was going 100 plus miles an hour on Jensen.
When he ran the red light?
Yes.
And-
Well, when he's fleeing, after he's fleeing,
running from
After
police.
he's
split the Uber in half.
Oh, wow. So mostly he was looking at a traffic ticket.
Right, yeah, running a red light.
Or
running
for
a red
whatever
light.
he had in his possession.
Right.
Evidently, he was on a few things that weren't allowed in court, but evidently that he was on a few things. He has a long rap sheet, both here in Texas and in California. So the jury came back in 39 minutes.
Wow.
That is remarkable. I've only, in all the cases that I've been involved with, and I'll hear from you in a second, Emily. There's only one other case that I've seen a jury come back quicker than that,
Mhm.
and that was the Urban Pena case.
Yeah.
Mm.
When they, as I like to say, they went to the restroom, came back,
And said, hey, we got,
and
yeah,
rang the bell.
Right.
right.
But 39 minutes is pretty remarkable.
That is.
It's-
Considering the case was kind of complex because you're evading,
Right.
So,
Causation.
Right.
Yeah.
So they came back, and then he had elected for the judge to impose punishment as
Mhm.
opposed to a jury. And because of his prior history, the punishment ranged from 25 to life in prison.
Mhm.
And we were ready again. We started Friday. We ended up getting punted to Monday for the punishment phase. And then all of a sudden, they ended up cutting a deal for 50 years.
What do you think about that, Emily?
I think that is a lot of time. And I think that if he must have panicked and was afraid of what the judge would sentence him to,
Yeah.
he probably believed that he was going to get life. I don't know who was prosecuting it. I don't know who was defending the case,
Right.
but I can probably, if it was me, I would prepare my client for a tough sentence, maybe life. And then, it's up to them if they want to proceed to the punishment phase or if they want to try to have me go negotiate something with
I mean,
the
it's almost
prosecutor.
like if he would have said, okay, the judge can sentence me.
Right,
I mean, of course, we don't know, but he
Right.
could have gotten half that. I mean,
right,
20, she could have sentenced to 25 years.
right. Well, I mean, and it's I'm thinking about it from the judge's perspective as well. So let's say that she wanted to give him life and then did give him life.
Yeah.
Now, people talk around the courthouse. It's going to disincentivize criminal defendants from electing to go to the judge for punishment if you know you're going to get life.
Yeah.
I mean, you might as well just take your chances with 12 people.
It was the 351st, Cornelio. Everyone in the courtroom they were so nice to us. The bailiff was very nice to me, very nice to you too. And I mean, Judge Cornelio has been the subject of breaking bond reports. She allowed a microphone in the court. I mean, it was very nice of her, what she did.
It was transparent.
Yeah, right. And obviously you could tell that she felt for the family. And I haven't been to one in a while. That's the first victim impact. I know you do this all the time.
No, it's been a
I'm
while since
telling
I've been
you.
in court. Wow.
Oh, that
Both
must have been
those-
brutal.
Oh, wow. I mean, I almost started crying. I mean, it was so sad. What the one mother got up there, Miss Vasquez, and she said the last thing that her daughter said to her was, "I'll be back." And she said she didn't come back. The next time I would see her was 5 days later in a coffin.
Oh,
And that was
wow.
her only daughter.
Yeah, her only daughter.
Oh, my.
Yeah, it was gut wrenching, wasn't it?
It was hard. I was proud of both moms for
Yeah.
having the courage and the fortitude to get up there. The defendant really didn't.
He did-
Did he look at them at all?
I asked them both if he acknowledged them in any way, and they
Right.
were both like, no. I mean, he just sort of sat
Right.
there.
Well, I'll tell you, that is, as a criminal defense attorney, having done this for 20 something years, that is one of the hardest parts of my job, is having to stand next to a client who's just been convicted and preparing them to receive a victim impact statement. Some of the cases, we tried them because of the offer, not because of guilt and innocence.
Right.
So I knew that they had that coming. Others where I believed they were truly innocent, it hurt me to have
That would be
a victim
hard.
lash out at them because I
Yeah.
thought that he was innocent. But there's been times when, I've been attacked in a victim impact statement, which is totally,
You're just doing your
not-
job.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. I've had to object
That's
sometimes
gotta
during
be a
victim.
weird feeling.
It is,
Yeah.
it was a sexual assault of a child case. Both parents came up to the front, addressed my client, and then addressed me. And so I try not to object during those statements because it's their right.
Sure.
But when they cross the line,
Right.
But I will tell you, there's some that have been so brutal. I've had to think of something else to not break down and cry myself.
We had a
I have
reporter.
a quick question before. And I'll use you for an example, does the now offender, does he have to stay in the courtroom? Can he say, I don't want to be there? Or I'm saying he, but I'm
That's a
curious
really
if
good
they have to
question.
be
I think
there.
that they have to be.
You
I don't
probably
think
couldn't
they-
leave unless
Right.
the judge said, okay,
Exactly.
you can go now.
Right. I mean, I think they can ask to leave, but they're as old timey judges would say, they're the property of the state now,
Yeah.
So
Okay.
if the judge isn't going to let the bailiff take them out of the room, they don't really have a choice whether to stay or not.
I was going to tell you about, we had a reporter that she's no longer with us, but there was a case where it was a three-year-old child was murdered. And this defense attorney, I don't remember his name, he's doing his job.
Right.
And man, she would dog him. She'd be, and I'm like, you got to get off this poor man. He's
Right.
it's like she's talking to him like he was
He is the
the
defendant.
accused killer. Right.
Right.
Yeah. That must be hard sometimes.
Oh, I know. It's died down a lot, but there was a period of time when I was a Breitbart sensation in a bad way.
Mm-hmm.
Was it the case we were talking about earlier of my client T-boned a girl coming home on prom night and killing
Yeah.
her? Well, that made it all over the
world.
news, but also I would read the comments and people said that they would hope I get murdered and raped. They hope my kids get
Or you retained? or
killed. I was
appointed?
appointed to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just wishing me ill, hoping my expensive plane crashes. I mean, it's really, tough. They tell
You
me
should
not
see
to
the
read that.
comments on
Oh, I
that.
know. Well, I've written some comments about him under my handle, Law Chick.
Right.
No, it's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard. They tell me not to read them, but I read them and I keep them in a little folder on my laptop called Mean Tweets,
Yeah.
just to remind me why I do what I do, And
How did you end up becoming an attorney?
Well, my father was a federal probation officer in the Southern District for 26 years.
Yeah.
And so he would take me around to different jails to visit clients. And obviously I couldn't go in. So I would just sit outside jails and look through his client book with a bunch of mugshots. And I just was intrigued with criminal law or something.
Yeah.
So
And I mean, it's part of the wheel that is
Right.
a needed.
right.
You have to have good qualified defense attorneys to
And you've
represent
been
people.
on both sides.
Right,
as
exactly.
well,
I was
so
a
you
process,
know
and I've
the-
worked at the Court of Criminal Appeals in Austin, where they do this appeals, the court of last resort for criminal matters. So
Yeah.
I've had that appellate background. I've been a prosecutor, and I've now a defense attorney. And I guess the bottom line is, I live here too. I have children. I have a business.
Right.
I'm not pro murder or pro crime or pro
Of
robbery.
course not.
So,
Right.
yeah. And they hate us until they need us.
Right. Yeah. Kind of like reporters.
Right. Yes.
I was
true.
actually telling the families because they were kind of upset with the defense attorney,
Oh, really?
on characterization and stuff. Kind of, in a way, he blamed the two girls for not having a seatbelt in the back seat, like that
Right.
would have mattered. Anyways, and I was just telling don't say anything. Look, you want him to be effective.
Right.
You want this attorney to
Yes.
be good. So don't let it get to you, because you don't want someone that's just going to sit there and do nothing and
Right.
not defend the client, because you don't want to go through this again.
Right.
Trust me.
He was also kind of, I mean, I don't know his name. I mean, I'm sure he's a very good attorney, but he was also kind of loud.
Mhm.
And you know, sometimes if somebody's,
Right.
well, you can, what, you made a remark about
I
The Sopranos or
because
something.
everybody referred to him and as it was like watching My Cousin Vinny.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't
And this
see.
wasn't just from, this was from other people
Right.
as well that made that kind of analogy. He had that kind of
Yeah.
abrasive
Well,
New
yeah.
York chutzpah type of.
Yeah.
And you have to
know.
be sensitive in those types of cases.
But you also have to come across like, you know, you're
right.
authoritative, you know what you're doing, you're trying to
Right.
get your point across. So,
Right.
you know, it's sort of a double-edged sword, because you got to be both. You have to
Right.
be compassionate,
Right.
but then you can't be like some
Right.
wallflower that, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's a terrible case. They were doing the right thing, taking an Uber. You know.
Yeah, right.
They
Yeah.
were doing everything right. And
Yes.
then just
Can you
like that.
imagine how that Uber driver who did testify.
Oh wow.
in
How did
court,
the
how did
Uber
he
driver
sur-
survive?
I mean, that's just one of those things you can't answer.
Wow.
And I'm sure every day he just wakes up and goes,
Thank you, God.
I
Yeah.
don't know why I'm here and they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was hard for him
I can
to
imagine.
testify, because obviously you're looking in your cars. The car was like cut in half just
Yeah.
about, because he was going 110 miles an hour.
They
Well,
didn't
and,
stand a chance.
no, and Sean Tier, you know, the assistant DA, he
Mhm.
made, I mean, he made an excellent point. Nobody won anything.
Right.
You know, it's like, just because this man chose to run
Right.
instead of stopping at a light,
Right.
he's going to be in prison for 50 years.
Right.
Two beautiful young women are gone.
Right.
I mean, it was like, and you were kind of talking about this before. It does show sometimes how you can make one stupid mistake
Right.
and it sort of snowballs.
Right. We call that making things worse. So
Yeah.
the case I was telling you about, where my client killed the woman the teenager on prom night. At best, he was looking at a DWI, a Class B misdemeanor, where the most time he would have been looking at is 6 months in the Harris County Jail. Instead, by not running, by not stopping and doing the right thing, he took the police on a 90 mile per hour police chase, endangering everybody who was on the road that night. He
Yeah.
drove through a strip mall, and instead of just stopping and giving the officer his ID, now he's serving 38 years for murder.
And who you're only in the movies do you successfully run from the police, right?
Exactly.
I mean, they have your license plate.
Yeah.
If they're not going to get you, then they're going to come and get you.
Right.
So it's like you're playing this game that you're never ever going to win.
It's not like you're part of the Sons of Anarchy.
Right.
Have you ever been, as a reporter, involved in a police chase, or you?
I haven't.
No.
No,
No.
I no, but I guess that brings up the issue of police chases in general. And when this case first broke, I made a statement to the news saying that every now and then someone has to die for us to revisit the issue of the Houston Police Department's chase policy.
Right.
And because there's a lot of things that could have happened. He could have radioed ahead. They could have had another car intercept. There was just a lot of other things. I'm no expert, granted, but I mean, it just seems like there had to be something else that could have been done. And this officer, like I said, everything was on body cam and on dash cam. He was amped up.
Yeah.
He was, the adrenaline was pumping. I mean,
Oh, I
He was
remember
amped
one
up.
where there was it was a female law officer, and when it ended, and it's all the helicopters are up, and it's on television. We were showing it, and she just like started pounding on
I
this guy.
remember
Really?
that one out in Beaumont. I think he ended up somewhere out there. Yeah.
But it was like-
yeah,
And like you said, like everybody saw this
Right.
on this big adrenaline rush,
Right.
and then it's things happen.
well,
And it's
yeah.
real tricky too when you're from a television standpoint, because it's breaking, it's visual,
Right,
and so everybody wants to show it.
right,
But then the whole time you're faced with, oh my God, if this ends
Right.
badly,
they're going to see it.
right.
Yeah,
You know,
what if
it's, you
have a
got to
kid
be able to,
crossing right, somebody crossing the street, family.
Well, that's
Yeah,
the thing. I mean,
yes,
you know, they'll
right.
go through neighborhoods.
or even you see the end of the crash and the suspect is killed. I mean, you don't,
Right.
you know, you don't want to show anybody's body, you know, so it's, but yeah, I can see it to some degree, but you got to get to a point where it's like, you have to look at like, okay, let's let this fool go.
Right, it's a
We'll get him
DWI.
later
Right.
instead of endangering the
Exactly.
public.
And the thing, we talked about how the Uber driver survived in this particular case. My client was going 90 miles per hour, T-boned this car. He lived.
Yeah.
And the deceased was on a date for prom, and her date lived, and he had to testify about.
But
being
you
trapped
look
in the
at
car.
instances where a lot of times drunk drivers,
Live.
yeah,
Right.
it's like they walk away without a
Right.
scratch.
Right. And I think it's probably because, you know, they're a little lubricated and
Yeah, yeah.
not, you know, clenching up or whatever. But yeah, those cases, there's no winners. And that victim impact statement was particularly brutal on the prom night murder. It was,
And I don't know
Is
if,
that a judge or a jury sentence? Or
that
plea-
was
plea deal?
it was
Plea
a PSI. So we
Okay.
pled open to the court. It was a visiting judge who presided over it. I think it was Judge Yates. How she came to the number 38, I don't know. But I thought, you know, that was a lot better than a jury was going to do.
yeah,
I mean, big time.
I don't know if I could do that, like give an impact
You could
statement
do
like
38 years or?
I mean, it would just be hard.
It's hard preparing families
Yeah.
for that. And I still remember the first time in open court that it was allowed in Harris County, and that was Judge Bill Harmon.
Mhm.
And that was when the Urban Pena
Yeah.
case. And I remember he came up to me in the hallway while the jury, he goes, what do you think if I let Mr. Ertman have a few words?
Oh,
And I said, he'd love it.
right.
And actually, the statute was on the books for a few years, but
Mhm.
no one
Ever did it.
ever
Yeah.
did it. And then, you know, it's an infamous scene right now where they have Randy standing up in the court. They didn't bring him up,
Right.
but he was just sitting in the courtroom and he just let loose.
Yeah.
And I remember the bailiffs at that time. One of the bailiffs leaned over to me and he goes, "If Mr. Ertman goes over the rail,
Mhm.
I'm going to give him a few minutes, and then I'm going to yank him off."
Right. Well, I mean, I've seen so many of those incidents where people just can't control
They get
themselves. They're
emotional.
just so emotional. I mean, what would any of us do if we saw someone who did harm to our family members
Right.
within reach? You know?
Well, there was one person yesterday yelled as they were taking
The
Brian Tatum out.
parting shot
Oh, really?
was when they were walking him, you know, back into the lockup facility,
Mhm.
and one of the family members
Yeah.
ran up and said, "I hope you rot in hell, you
Yeah.
guys." So
Yeah. Now, see that I could do that
Right.
Either way.
more than I could like.
that was timed and planned.
Right.
And he'd been waiting
Yeah.
a long
Hey,
time.
good
And
for
what are they
him. I mean,
gonna
he
do?
got that moment.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
what's the judge going to do? The trial's over. It's
Yeah.
all over.
and it wasn't. It was kind of. I mean, it was an outburst, but it was sort of subdued in a way. I mean, it wasn't like a big scene.
Right.
You
No one
know.
had to hold him back. Or
Right.
Right, yeah.
Something like that, you know. So it was, you know, as I said, you know, refereeing basketball, no harm, no foul.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
So,
and that is a scary
hey,
time.
you were at a school last week, weren't you?
Back to school.
No, you weren't. That's not Rodney Dangerfield. But that's one of the funniest movies of all time.
It is.
By the way.
He's segueing into.
Thornton
Oh, yes,
Mellon.
yes.
Did you do a report or something?
Yes.
So you were actually
Doing his
I was
job.
actually out doing something.
Doing his job.
on the scene.
Why do you seem so surprised? And I'm like, you're as bad as Raymond. On the way over here, I'm telling him about yesterday, you know, in the court. And he said, "You were there?" Yes.
You were the only one, with the exception of Judge Univision, that was there. Now,
Yeah.
I noticed all the other stations have now piled on
Right.
with their own report, but you know.
Did you zoomed in or you were?
No, I was,
you were physically
Emily,
there?
I was physically there.
I will
I was
vouch for
physically
him.
there.
I can vouch
Right.
for him.
And I went there Friday.
Right.
It was supposed to happen Friday, but then they moved it to
Right.
today. I do get some strange looks sometimes in the courthouse, as you can imagine.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Especially
It's like-
if you and I are together.
Right.
It's
Oh,
like-
forget it.
It's like,
Right.
The,
People duck.
the one bailiff dude in Judge Cornelius' court, he was real nice. He walked, hello, Mr. Wallace, and Andy's sitting right behind me. I'm thinking he's going to come over and
Right.
kick us
he
both
had
out of here.
already spoke to me.
Right.
Yes.
But
So
it was very nice.
It was. So
The
going
reason
back,
he
right,
brought up school is because tonight's Breaking Bond deals with last week's incident where first you had three suspects, an officer involved shooting, one teenager is shot and wounded, another runs over back to school. And we found
Another
out
good
some,
movie.
right, we found out some interesting things about that young man, didn't we?
yes, we did.
So be sure to tune in to tonight's Breaking Bond report. We will be on at least 30 minutes late because of the presidential address.
You don't have any poll with the.
No, I know it's surprising.
Let's call him. So before we leave, I don't know. Do you want one or not? I'm going to light up. But here's my problem with this. For those that are old enough to remember, you remember when these actually had like red
Right,
tip?
Yeah,
Not one single one in this box.
I have some at home.
it's like pure
They're
sugar,
bubblegum. They're
right?
bubblegum.
World confections.
Now that would be good.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
going to hear from me because here you don't have. I want the red tips. So, but again, it was a good day yesterday.
It was.
And we'll light up a victory.
And
Maybe it's a light candy.
there you go. Yeah,
Right. And remember, do the right thing. Don't make matters worse.
that's right. Thank you, Emily. That's right. Remember that always. Don't make matters worse, and be sure to tune in to Box 26 News tonight at 9 for Breaking Bond. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate you. I'm gonna light that up.